So today we are going to talk about our relationship with money. And of course, like we see on Facebook, we have that wonderful category, it is complicated. Um, our relationship with money is something that I only recently thought to explore. And I'm really excited to be sharing this material with you all because it has given me insights on myself, my spending, and how I feel about money. So I want to give everyone a welcome. My name is Susan, and I am, I'm going to close my camera just in case. I am a social worker here at the CAC, and I do training and education. This is the first time, as I mentioned, that I've done this online. So hopefully this will go smoothly. And if it doesn't, I promise you I will have it fixed by the next time. I love sharing ideas and learning ideas. I really do gain as much from developing trainings as I think the participants. But I want to give a little disclaimer. These materials are being presented by myself as a social worker. So I'm not a financial advisor. I don't have the authority to dispense legal or financial advice, but this training is for self-education, and it's a great part of a discussion that we can have on financial health and families. So our agenda for this morning, we did our little introduction. We're going to do an activity. We're going to cover parts 1 and 2, and then have a wrap up. So what you'll need handy for this activity is paper and a pencil and just a few ideas. And we're going to take about 3 minutes. Is everybody ready to go on that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so what I want y'all to do is list all of the words, phrases, sayings, songs, or any other association you have with the word money. So we're gonna sit down and think about associations. I'm gonna do this as well. And we'll share a few of them in just a few moments. There are a ton. I mean, we really only touched on just a few associations. But the word money, I mean, in our culture is everywhere. And especially if we think about what's going on right now, there are people experiencing money struggles who maybe have not done that before. So we see a lot of it in the news, a lot of it related to COVID, a lot of it in our own experiences personally. So why I wanted to do the training about money relationships is because a lot of times, you know, it's fine to say, you know, I want to set a budget and I want to accomplish certain goals. And, you know, we know these are good things. These are practically good things. But a lot of times I know in my own life, there are things that I've failed at. And I still struggle with maintaining those things today. And it's because of my relationship with money. Because we all bring with us our family history. We have a lot of emotions tied to it, our attitudes and feelings and our culture. All of these things influence how we make decisions about money. And so it's important to talk about it because a lot of times we're not even aware of all that baggage that we're carrying around money. And so the more we can talk about it and examine ourselves and how we feel about it and how we think about it, the more control I think we can have and kind of a clearer picture and not just go by our sense of feelings, but be able to maybe look at things in a new way. So I thought, you know, this was a good way to explore this conversation about finances by first kind of giving everyone an opportunity to explore what they have kind of in themselves. So a little bit about where our associations from money come from. Our family, and that can be our family of origin. It can be from our parents. It can come from our grandparents. It can come from many generations. There, oftentimes in families, you know, when something happens, it can affect future generations. Our family situation now, which may be different from the way that we grew up, but we carry those money feelings down through our family. I know I came from a family where we never discussed money. I had no idea what my parents made, what our financial situation was. I just knew it was a source of stress and worry, and we were on a tight budget. And so I got a very much do not talk about it rule in my family. Some of our associations from money come from friends, whether that be when we were younger or the friends that we have now. We definitely see different friends have different attitudes about money and can influence our decisions about money. We've all had that friend who we see as very impulsive with their money, and when you're with them, it is so hard not to be impulsive as well. So that definitely plays a role in our thoughts about money. Media is a huge one. We kind of take our cues on our culture from the media. So we have someone coming in to the waiting area. Welcome. So the media plays a huge role in our culture about money and how we feel about money, what influences our decisions. Just think about advertising. And I mean, advertisers' jobs are to convince you to buy things that you may not really even need. I mean, that's what they do for a living. So media plays a huge role. Government, for many of us, the government has a measure of influence over our money, whether that be those who live on Social Security, those who utilize WIC or SNAP benefits, disability payments, unemployment, whether or not we get a stimulus check, which I'm really kind of hanging on and waiting for to see if we get another one. So government plays a big role in our money. Okay, we also see that our faith communities can play a part in our associations and attitudes about money. Many faith communities are very direct about expectations on their congregation. Others may not be, but it is part of the tradition to be generous in the faith community or outside of the faith community in terms of donations. So that plays a role with our money. And finally, social service organizations, which I think I probably touched a little bit when we talked about government, but social service organizations can play a very strong role. They can be helpers to help us get money that we should be getting. They also can have programs that help facilitate. So social service organizations, or like I mentioned before, the WIC program or the SNAP program. So these are all kind of the things that we have going on in our life related to money, at least external things. Then we're going to talk a little bit about internal things. So we took a look at the surrounding influences, and then, like I mentioned earlier, um, we all have attitudes and feelings that fuel our decisions. So I wanted to give just a couple example stories just to kind of get your mind working and to think a little bit about what your association and feelings and attitudes are. So if you think about, childhood and the school experience, that can have a really deep impact how you feel about money later in the future as adults. So I'm going to share an example out of my own life. One of my children really, really struggled with the idea that we were low income and that we oftentimes needed to receive assistance for things when we were a young family raising our children. And my one son, it just really bothered him to the point where I see him making certain decisions in his life today, influenced by that experience as a child. I think about news stories about the children who are turned away at the lunch line because their parents weren't able to pay the cafeteria bill. That has got to have a huge influence on that young person and how they feel about money going forward. I think about things like the book sales where do they still do that in school?
Yeah, well, last year they did.
Last year they did, yeah, everything's different this year. So the book clubs where it seems really inexpensive and you think, oh, I know they think in their minds like it's just a few dollars, but for many of us a few dollars was not in the budget. And so there's a child who isn't participating in the program, all the other kids in the classroom are. And so these experiences can really impact. Now, there's also some very positives. For example, there are school communities where there isn't a high disparity of the haves and have-nots, and there's a solidarity. There's my kids experienced this when they went to a very rural school where they realized that everybody in the school were kind of struggling financially. It wasn't just us, and that actually empowered them. So the school experience can definitely fuel our decisions in the future. And then there's on the job. What kind of job do we take? How do we feel about being paid every week, every 2 weeks, once a month? To me, like, I know for a long, long time on my job, I got paid every week. And when I went to an every 2-week pay cycle, it was really hard. And there are other positions that are like maybe once a semester. So our attitudes and feelings about how we relate to money on the job, whether we choose to do 2 jobs, whether you're choosing a shift that really you don't prefer, like for example, night shift. Now some people love the night shift, but usually on night shift, people get paid a little bit more. There's a differential on night shift. So there could be many times that people are making a decision about working a certain shift. It's very common to see families having to work 2 different jobs, opposite shifts. People kind of make do, and that can definitely fuel our decisions. Then there's the experience of the end of the month blues. When the budget doesn't exactly go right, and it's nearing the end of the month, you've run out of stuff, you're making do in the pantry, and you definitely have your attitudes and feelings shaped about your financial situation during that end of the month blues. I can definitely remember in our family, um, as we got to the end of the month and if we were running low, we tended to go a little crazy then in the beginning of the month when we got money again. And we totally blow our budget. Like it was just this endless cycle. And it's because that end of the month was so painful doing without. It made us a little bit careless in the next month. And this is, kind of why I wanted to talk about these things, because these are real. This is how people people make it through, and it has an effect on our ability to kind of get control of our finances. And just, I'm sure those of you who are here joining with us, you have your own experiences, and it influences how you feel about your decisions, how you make decisions, what that means in your life. So, let's see. So I read a really interesting article that talks about our money personalities. So there are different categories. There are people who are spenders, savers, risk takers, security seekers, and flyers. And I couldn't guess what a flyer was, and I'll go around and share these. And this couple that did this research found that most people are a combination of two. So if you're head of your household, if you run your finances in your home, you have a little bit of one and the other. What can be complicated too is if there's more than one person contributing in the household, and you each have different money personalities. So sometimes they can be complementary, and sometimes they can cause conflict. So I was really interested. This is almost like a little horoscope of our money personality. So spenders. Spenders are people who spend money, and they do it just enjoying life. There are people who love to shop. And it's just what they feel they work for. Then there are those who are savers, and they usually have money tucked away for a rainy day. Bills are paid in full. And what makes them happy is seeing like a little savings account. My mother calls it her nest egg. My mom is such a little squirrely saver. I unfortunately did not inherit her trait. So, that's why I'm learning from this presentation. Risk takers are people who have ideas that may or may not work out for them financially, but they're willing to gamble. So, for instance, I used to work in a convenience store, and I sold lottery tickets. I sold a lot of lottery tickets. And I had my regular customers that, for them, like the occasional time that they hit on the lottery was worth the enormous amount of money that they spent on tickets. They were just risk takers. But it isn't just lottery. It can be business endeavors. It can be a lot of different things. Then there are those who are security seekers. So they do their homework about a project, about an item. They're very hesitant to spend. They're interested in not having that money worry. And then the flyer, this one was interesting to me. I'd never really thought about this. A flyer is a person who is very happy to be hands off of the financial planning in the household. So maybe 2 adults and one person pretty much runs the finances, and the other person is very happy to go, okay, I don't have to do anything. That's great. So taking a look, I can see definitely myself in several of the categories. I can see my husband in definitely some of the other ones. And it's no value judgment on any particular category. It just is really good to know what is your personality, what do you kind of tend to do, and it'll help guide you on your decisions as you move forward. So a little bit more about the money personalities. Scott and Bethany, who did the 5 money personalities report, over 70% of divorced couples cite financial issues as the #1 cause of argument. And financial discord can spill over. It isn't just between, married couples, but it can definitely spill over into relationships with children and friends and family. So it's important that we explore how money relates to our values and our attitudes, our behaviors, and with the people in our life to find some kind of common ground that we can build sustainable financial relationships. I have met couples that keep their money completely separate, a his and her bank account, and they divide up the bills, and that's how they do it. I mean, people do things in different ways depending on how they feel. So this is some questions for reflection. And it's just something to take away. If you're so moved to write these down for yourself, that's great. If not, just kind of let's just read through them together. But I thought these were really good questions to learn a little bit more about ourselves. What do you remember the most from your childhood in regards to money? What is the first word that comes into your mind when you hear the word money? How important is money in your life, and why do you feel that way? How do you make decisions? So we talked a little bit about those personalities. How do we make decisions about spending money? Are we spontaneous? Are we careful? Do we not care? How do you feel about financially privileged people? And how do you feel about financially deprived people? And I will share that some of these questions, when I prepared this training, really brought up a lot of feelings for me that I hadn't quite explored. I think these are powerful questions. I know that I did not realize that I felt a little biased against financially privileged people. But I think because of my culture and life experience and ways in which I've navigated the world, that happened. And so it was important for me to go, wow, I didn't realize that. I'm going to have to check myself and not make snap judgments about people based on that. Or just doing some thoughts about my childhood and the struggle that it was for my family. So these are some really good questions to take your time and think about, especially as we move forward in our trainings and we talk a little bit more about finances. It's going to be important that we are as clear as we can be and feel positive and feel good about moving forward in our financial training. So today's training was about our relationship with money. It definitely, I think, raises, really the answers are you. They're inside. It's not something that is across the board. It's individual for every person and their life experience. But we're bringing all of these things to the table when we start to plan financially. Our next class is going to be on why is budgeting so hard, or why do I groan inside when I think about making a budget, and it's also a more it's a more exploration of how we feel about those things. And I thought that was important for us to cover. before we start actually with the nuts and bolts of some of the basics of budgeting 101. Now, I want to give the joke of the day. I've talked about the joke of the day. I don't know if you guys are aware that we're doing a joke of the day. And this one, all right, one sec. I'm going to take off our screen and open up. I think I have everyone here. I'm having a technical difficulty, so sorry, guys. So I'm trying to get the screen bigger, but I can't. So I'm back. We're done with our training. So the joke of the day. What do you call an alligator in a vest? Anyone got a guess?
I know this one.
What'd you say?
All right,
What's the joke? I didn't hear it.
that's okay. What do you call an alligator in a vest?
In a vest.
Yeah,
Oh,
it is called an investigator.
oh shoot. Oh, that's so bad.
That is
I
so
love this
bad,
one.
but it's so good. I don't know why, but that one tickles me like crazy.